Hello and welcome everyone to Bortnik's YouTube channel. My name is James Talberg and I'm excited to be today not just with Ruslan Bortnik but also with Marina Cherenkova, with two of my colleagues. And we're going to discuss the latest updates about Ukraine and around Ukraine. And we're going to take that discussion into what happened in the Oval Office between Trump and Zelensky. Not just what happened there, but the dust have settled, and what are the outcomes and what potentially are going to be the next steps around that situation. Colleagues, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, too,
Thank you,
James.
James.
Ruslan, what is happening right now in terms of the post-fact situation with that scandal in the Oval Office? Do we have any updates that are following up from that situation?
Yes, it looks like this scandal even growing up nowadays, because we have a lot of hard comments from the Trump's team this day on the Zelensky and on Ukraine. For example, Mike Waltz, Trump's advisor on security, answering for a question from CNN, said that we need a leader, talking about Zelensky. He said, we need a leader who can deal with us, at some point deal with the Russians. And if it becomes clear that Zelensky's personal or political motives are not aligned with the goal of the ending the fighting in his country, then I think we are going to have a real problem. So Waltz is talking about the possible resign on Zelensky, or the will from Trump's administration that Zelensky to be resigned. Moreover, we have House Speaker Michael Johnson followed Waltz in saying that Ukraine may need a different leader if Zelensky does not meet United States demands. He said, Mike Johnson today, also a few hours ago, he said something has to change. Either he has to come to his senses and come back to the table in gratitude, or someone else has to lead the country to do it, said Johnson. And Waltz also said, who today hinted at the need for Zelensky to leave. Waltz said, it has not become clear to us that President Zelensky is willing to negotiate and work in good faith to end this war. And Zelensky is like an ex. It's a very sharp statement. Listen very carefully. Zelensky is like an ex who just wants to argue about something you said 9 years ago instead of moving the relationship forward. This is a statement of Waltz. Secretary of the State Marco Rubio appears on American television, also on ABC, and said that the U.S. viewed Zelensky's actions in the White House during the altercation with the United States president as an attempt to hinder the Trump administration's effort to achieve a peaceful settlement in Ukraine. He also said that he had not spoken to either Zelensky or Sibiga, it's the Minister of External Affairs of Ukraine, since the scandal in the Oval Office. We will be ready to resume cooperation when they are ready to make peace, Rubio said. And he also stated that the United States will not provide any security guarantees for Ukraine now. The Ukrainians have been told more than once that peace must first be established and then security guarantees can be discussed, he added. And we have even more such statements, and it looks like United States and Trump's administration started a new wave of new wave of attack on Zelensky. Also, Trump in his social network Truth Social states Trump shared the opinion and which states that Zelensky will have no choice but to give in to the United States. Zelensky will now have no choice but to back down and accept Trump's terms. This post Trump shares in it's not Trump's post, but he shares it in his social media. By making the mineral deal, Trump is ensuring American participation in Ukraine's mining industry. This prevents the possibility of Russia invading, since an attack on Ukraine would mean threatening American lives, something that would force the United States to respond. And also we have it's going on just on our eyes. The Federal Investigation Bureau Director Patel said he has ordered Congress to investigate where hundreds of billions of dollars sent to Kyiv went. Ukraine is a place of money laundering and corruption. This head of FBI said just now. And I think it's enough for the beginning of for discussion, colleagues.
Yeah, thank you, Ruslan.
Such a heavy things are saying from the American side now to Ukraine.
So those are very strict comments and positions from those people and from Trump's administration. I want to break it down to fundamentals, just to understand that situation from the basic level. First, I'm trying to understand, if you colleagues can help me with that, how is that situation perceived by the United States and by Ukraine in terms of the electorate, right? So, for example, Marina, if you can guide us a little bit into how this scandal was perceived in the United States for the average Americans. Because I've seen a lot of posts and a lot of tweets that people are supporting him, that he was humiliated, and he's a leader of his country that is trying to protect his country, and all these statements that Ruslan just mentioned from the political people, from the political leaders, from the FBI, that are clearly seeing that as a very negative thing and would like even to start investigations in regard to how money was sent to Ukraine and how it was spent in Ukraine.
Thank you, James. I believe that it is obvious for anyone that American society is divided, and it is divided exactly in the same proportion as it was before the election. CNN did a very fast questionnaire or ask people what do they think, and they ask more than 112 people what would be their reaction or how they assess Trump-Zelensky hard discussions. 50.3 believe that Trump is the person who should be blamed. 42% is on the Vice President Vance side, and just only 4% believe that it is pure Mr. Zelensky's fault. That division is quite interesting, because if we will remember how Americans voted during the last president's election, it's going to be almost the same. However, personally, my personal opinion is the following. I'm slightly surprised that a lot of people do believe that politics or geopolitics should be fair, they are looking for justice. They do look for the high moral standards and values. And that is something which I think is not quite good for the population of any country, because we do understand that politics cannot be fair, and politics and justice is something which I would regard as not synonyms at all. So from my perspective, Americans now are divided, and I believe that more than quarter of Americans didn't express their true opinion. They try to lay low, as we say here in Nebraska, because I'm from Nebraska, that is Midwest. And people in Midwest states, they try not to react immediately on something. They prefer to process, to analyze, and after that to make their conclusions. That's everything from me, James.
Ruslan, President Zelensky is still a legitimate president of the Ukraine. How is this scandal was perceived in Ukraine, and now how is in the Ukrainian society? And the second layer, how are all these statements that you've just mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that are coming after that scandal from Trump's administration, from political leaders in the United States, how are they now perceived in the Ukrainian society and the Ukrainian leadership as well?
I think Ukrainian society is also split in two parts in attitude to the scandal in Oval Office, in White House. That part of society, majority of society, which is willing to achieve the peace to end the war. Of course, they are looking for this situation like in very soft way. When I can say they are looking for this situation like a lost chance to the peace, because agreement with Trump is opening the path to the negotiation with Russia and to the peace. And of course, passionate part of our society, who is smaller than a half, much smaller than a half, this part of society is saying that he is a hero. He was only one man in the world who is able to stand against the Trump. Even the Macron or Starmer were not able to do this during their meeting. So he is a hero who is standing for the people's interest, who is standing for our country. If we're talking about elites who are managing the country, of course they are in shock now, because it means such a quarrel in the White House. It means the losing of support from United States. We are talking not only about military or financial support, but also political support, which is extremely important for Ukraine also. And this managing Ukrainian elites just disoriented, and they just don't know what to do in the further, and what will be the future of Ukraine. Ukrainian elites are losing our confidence in this situation, because the balance which was formed around Ukraine during the war is changing, very dramatically changing, very fast changing, just on our eyes. So there is a split attitude to it. But of course, in mass media, you will see only a passionate part. People who are saying, we are for Zelensky, we are support our president, and so on, because it's necessary part of state propaganda, of state mobilization. We need to understand this. Also, but I think it's not a problem only for Ukraine, but I think it's a general situation in the world when the liberal pro-Ukrainian, anti-Trump, mass media,
anti-Trump.
Yes, they are trying to show how Vance is escaping from the ski resort and so on and so on. A lot of these plots we see because it's a part of a global struggle between the right-wing conservatives, which are leading by the Trump, and left-wing liberals, which are now without leader, but they can make, I think, the next one leader who will be leading the Democratic Party of United States to the next congressional elections.
And what about the statements that came afterwards from Marco Rubio and other political leaders and political figures in the United States in regards to that scandals that obviously were negative towards Zelensky and towards that scandal? How is the Ukrainian societies perceiving those comments, if they even have access to those comments and those publications and tweets and posts? And also the elites that you have mentioned, the managers of Ukraine, the political leaders, the business leaders, how are they perceiving those negative comments? Because you have mentioned that they are disoriented. I would assume that all these comments, tweets, and posts are even disorienting them more because nobody's trying to balance it out. So it's kind of like still going down the hill.
For elites, it means the continuation of the conflict. And I will share one more post for you colleagues now. It's an Elon Musk post, and which is very remarkable. I think, I hope, not this post, but this post. Do you see this post? Yeah?
Yeah.
And all the scandals showing for us that there is a deep gap, a strategic gap between the Trump administration and between the Zelensky team. And this deep gap is forming not around the mineral deal. They were not discussing the mineral deal at all. This gap is between is made on the topic of peace or war. And Elon Musk said that Trump demanded from Zelensky during the meeting ceasefire. But Zelensky wanted to continue the war and to achieve the guarantees, security guarantees for the country. And Trump's administration now is willing to make a deal with Russia. The first stage of which will be ceasefire. Russia is also against it. But Russia is trying to be silent at this moment. And Zelensky rejection from Zelensky, this ceasefire is a starting point in the core of this conflict. Musk made such a picture with de facto blaming Zelensky on the future deaths on the front and so on. You can see, you can stop the Trump at any moment, but you refuse because you need guarantees that it won't start moving again in a few years. This is attack against Ukrainian position on security guarantees. And
Ruslan, this is something.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
This is something that I would really like to discuss with you. It's interesting for me to understand if we can break it down factually. When we talk about security guarantees, the Ukrainian president, if I understand correctly, the Ukrainian elite, political elite, they want to receive guarantees. If I understand correctly, those guarantees are supposed to mean that if we stop the war, we have an absolute concrete guarantee that it will never happen again. Is that what they mean when they say we want guarantees?
I don't know exactly, of course. But
just if we're trying to estimate.
No one knows what is lying in the red folder. But if we are trying to analyze the public statements of Zelensky, security guarantees for Ukrainian side, it's a NATO troops on Ukrainian territory. It's a money to keep the army near 800,000 people. And it's a no-fly zone over the Ukraine and something like this. And of course, we are talking, it's a public part, but I think there is also a hidden part about the personal guarantees, security guarantees for elites.
So, James, I just would like to add and to elaborate on Ruslan's statement. Mm-hmm. When do we talk about elite of Ukraine? What kind of definitions do we have? because my perception of geopolitics and any politics is not romantic at all. In the previous interviews, the president of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky, said out loud that he has 5 or 6 managers who do help him to manage country. Am I right saying that we are talking about elite, which consists of 5 or 6 managers,
and people around them?
Yes, exactly. So that is something which is unknown, and a lot of small things, and we do remember the devil is always in the details, right? A lot of small details which are unknown for public, for expertise representatives. Those details might be vitally important for the further negotiations, for the further development.
Absolutely.
So, however, I just would like us to drop all emotions and to play chess, or just to remember what kind of facts do we have on our tables. So the question number 1, whose idea about minerals it was? The answer is Ukrainian one. Who wanted to sign that idea, that deal? Ukrainians. Which country wanted to have a meeting in Washington, D.C. with the President Trump? Ukraine. Ukraine did hire a lot of lobbyist companies, and the Ukrainian embassy in Washington, D.C. was quite active in organizing all meetings. So they've got that meeting. They've got the opportunity to sign the deal. And it happened that it was not the priority. Again, I do apologize. I'm not talking about the values or morality of that. I'm talking only
just about
facts. So if I want something, if I do understand that that something could save lives of 1,000 people, and if I'm somebody in public service or in statecraft system, probably, I just say probably, I should behave myself slightly different. And that is the polite way to put that in front of you, gentlemen. I'm sorry.
Ruslan, you were planning to add something on top of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Marina. The problem is that just a ceasefire for Ukrainian elites means elections. And due to the sociological surveys, we can say that Zelensky may lose the power. His team exactly will lose the power. His party is not popular in Ukraine at all now. But he personally is just a competitor for the presidential election. But he may lose the power, and I think that's a problem for a just ceasefire. Zelensky and Ukrainian elites need a symbolic victory, and they need a lot of additional resources to be successful in the next elections, or they don't need the situation of elections. They don't, but the way for it is a ceasefire. So this is a very simple game. Talking about the situation in the Oval Office.
But hold on, Ruslan. Before we get into the Oval Office, sorry that I'm pausing you here. I just still want to go back to the security guarantees and the things that were discussed, and just break it down to the basics and to the facts. So again, Ukraine, the Ukrainian political elite, as you mentioned before, the 5-6 managers and the people around them, they are pushing for security guarantees first, ceasefire second, right? That's their perspective. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay. So from their perspective, as you mentioned before, and Marina has elaborated on that a little bit as well, from their perspective, security guarantees first is personal security guarantees, potential membership in NATO, closed sky on top of Ukraine, etc., etc., etc.
member
So
or Europe Union and so on.
member
and
in
so
the
on.
European
Yeah.
Union, that's their security guarantees. And
But-
then they
yeah.
want ceasefire, right?
Yeah, but you know, to give Ukrainian security guarantees, for example, from United States side, it means to achieve a significant risk to a straight conflict with Russia, because
Absolutely.
no one can guarantee that war will stop after the security guarantees will be achieved by Ukraine.
After you provide security guarantees.
Moreover,
So this is exactly what I'm trying to
Yeah, moreover, many political experts in the West are saying that Ukraine is trying to involve Western countries to this war. So there is a very deep distrust between the sides in this topic also.
And then from the United States perspective, first we need to stop the war. First, the ceasefire. First, we're going to put the weapons down. And then we negotiate business deals, NATO, European Union, potential guarantees, personal guarantees, etc., etc., etc.
Not exactly. And then,
so can you elaborate on that?
Yes, and then European Union countries or European countries, Great Britain, France, and other countries will give you as security guarantees, military security guarantees to be exact. And United States will give you informal security guarantees through the mineral deal, because we will bring our people, our money to your lands, and we will be defending our money interest in your lands. Marina, sorry.
I just would like to bring our discussion on the ground.
Yeah.
When we do discuss the military guarantees from European Union, do we understand that European Union countries do not have weapons, do not have technologies, they don't have armies? For God's sake, let us be very straight to the point, because I believe that nowadays, if we are not very sharp and very earnest, that would lead us to some unknown fantasy land. The problem with Europe, that Europe is not able to protect itself. That's the main problem. That's why, as the person who been living in Ukraine for almost all my life, I'm very, very critical about this type of protection. It is not reliable protection. Whether we want that or not, we have to be very close with the United States, because the United States of America at this period of time is the only country with a strong army, really good financial pillow, and probably the best geopolitics network.
Yes, and no, Marina. I agree with you on European security forces and so on. You are right, but look wider. Is there any army in the world which is able to give Ukrainian security guarantees in face of Russia? Even United States Army, I think, will not be able. Will not. They are not going to do it at all, because they are not able, because of military, logistic, money, and many reasons, nuclear reasons in the end. And
what about
Thank
Turkey?
Thank you so much, Ruslan. That was perfect pass, as the European football player would say, from you. That's why Trump offers an economic deal. That's why, because the combination of nukes, quite powerful army, which is still in the United States, and economic development in the future, those trinity or triangle is much more reliable composition to protect Ukraine than any other. It's romantic attitude to freedom or romantic attitude to the global politics.
Yes,
the combination of all those three could be the case.
Yes.
And one more comment from me. It is from my perspective, as the person who was, due to my previous job, was involved in ceasefire negotiations. I have to tell you that it is impossible to stop the war if you are not negotiating a very proper ceasefire. And to negotiate ceasefire, it takes you quite a long period of time. But that period of time gives other people opportunity to plan a proper war end. Because ceasefire is not a trick. Ceasefire is time when other people, teams of negotiations do work hard during the same period of time.
To summarize my position in this block of our discussion, I want to share one of my thought, colleagues. I think we are looking security guarantees in not the right place. I don't believe that there could be some military security guarantees, just a military security guarantees in face of Russia. I think we need to find these security guarantees in new geopolitical balance and in resolution the reasons for the conflict. In new international status of Ukraine, because if you will try and just to build the wall between Ukraine and Russia from the foreign soldiers, it's just impossible. It's just impossible. No one army in the world will be able to do it. No one. So we need to find some other agreements with Russia on the neutrality, on the Russian Western, Eastern, Southern balance on Ukraine, on the special status of Ukraine, of the resolving the reasons for this conflict. I think so.
Colleagues, so if we're trying to analyze that situation again, I want to go back to what's first, security guarantees or ceasefire. From your perspective, to achieve peace, to achieve the start of peaceful negotiations, what should come first? Who's right? Trump administration, that ceasefire should be achieved first, and then negotiation can start around guarantees, around how the peace is going to look like, about all the deals, the business deals that will be involved, or security guarantees have to be announced and provided first?
Marina?
But I believe that security guarantees in a very draft form, they were verbalized already. First of all, it's potential that NATO would provide boots on the ground. Of course, Russia was against that, but at least it was verbalized. Second, it is support, financial and military support. I mean, weapons and equipment and intelligence support to Ukraine. That's the second layer, and economic or deal, that's the third layer. From my perspective, that was verbalized. Probably it was not accepted from the very beginning. Probably those three layers were manipulated and misunderstood. I have no slightest idea how it works in Ukrainian managers' head. I just don't know. From my perspective, everything was said very clearly. Ceasefire goes always first. Always. There is no other variance. Because as I've said earlier, ceasefire gives an opportunity for 2, 3, 5, 10 teams to carry on negotiations and to break down those negotiations to the very, very sharp details with the guarantees. I hope I was understandable.
Absolutely.
I just don't know.
That makes an absolute sense.
I don't want us to be in illusion. I don't want those people who do listen to us to be in illusion. Unfortunately, politics, and especially geopolitics, is a very pragmatic sphere of relationship, very pragmatic. And there is neither drama, no romance inside of that very close circle of those who do the foreign policy from any country. It doesn't matter which country, really does not matter. So my understanding is deal was the third layer of security guarantees, and financial support military support, equipment support from from the United States was the second layer, and the third, boots on the ground or any European military representatives in Ukraine. And
Marina,
I just would like to reiterate myself that Russia was against that. That means for me that it was still the process of negotiation.
Marina, so if I understand correctly, then Trump's administration had a productive plan, productive approach on how to potentially solve that conflict, or at least starting solving that conflict.
I would say that your definition probably is the most acceptable now, because you've said starting to solve that.
Yeah, absolutely, because
Yes.
it's a very complex issue, starting in that
Exactly.
direction.
But James, unfortunately, not everyone understands that. It is not just complicated, it's very complicated issues. I believe that rejection of everything what offers Trump's administration is linked to the image of the Trump, which probably was organized by somebody inside of the United States from the different, let's say, political camp. But as I say, those people who are pragmatic, they have to divide and they have to differentiate personality from politics. You might not want to talk to Trump, you might not like him, but what he offers at this stage as the foreign policy tools to start mitigating Russia-Ukraine conflict, from my perspective, is a very practical attitude and very practical approach and very realistic scenario.
Ruslan, what would you say to all those voices that are currently screaming and saying negotiations with Putin are impossible? And I think, if I remember correctly, Zelensky during that scandal have said, or he was trying to say by himself, or to make that point, that Putin breaks all the deals. He's not credible. It is impossible to politically negotiate with him. So from one perspective, we have a clear understanding that the direction that Trump's administration was picked by them is the way to achieve peace, or start achieving peace. Again, it's complex. It takes a lot of effort. It might take a long time, months or years, but that's the direction that anyone who wants to achieve at the end of the day peace, that's the direction that they should pick. But at the same time, from the second perspective, we have all these voices that are saying, but it is impossible to negotiate anything with Putin. Therefore, negotiations are impossible.
When I'm meeting such people, I'm asking them, what do you suggest? Yeah. What can you propose? What future are you waiting for our kids, for our people, in other way? Of course, every time you are doing negotiation with enemies, you don't need to do negotiation with allies. Negotiations is about speaking, talking, changing with somebody, foreign enemy, and so on and so on. It's a nature of negotiation. So I think it's just a rhetoric. It's very dangerous rhetoric, because we are paying for this rhetoric by lives of our people, everyday lives. And this tram is cutting the bodies every day, this military tram. And of course, there is no easy way to achieve the peace. Because especially in this very hard, large-scale war with a lot of victims of this war, civilians and militaries especially in this war. Of course, the best way to achieve the peace to make a deal, but it's not impossible to make a deal during the continuation of the war, because every day people are dying, and you cannot make a good negotiation in the time when the people are dying every day. It's disturbing the public opinion. It broke sorrow. It making a lot of sufferings, and so on and so on. So I agree with Marina. Ceasefire. It's not the best. It's very hard, but only one way to achieve the peace in the end. It may happen that we will not achieve peace in the end. But even a years of the rest, a years of saving the lives, is extremely important time for every people, for every country. I want to remind only one example, very remarkable example for me, from the political history between the Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And after the long, many years rebels war, they made tens of agreements, they made tens of ceasefire, and only many years they will be able to achieve the stable peace. Because every time after ceasefire or new peace agreement, there were some forces and people who are trying to break it because they wanted to continue the war. And we need to remember every time when we are making the peace deal or ceasefire, like it was during the Minsk agreement in Ukraine, that we are not able to achieve the absolute stop fighting, because there will be the third forces or people inside of your country which will be willing to continue the fight because of money, because of power, because of revenge, because of many reasons.
Colleagues, we have explored the situation from the United States perspective, from the American society, from the Trump's administration. We have explored how Ukrainian elite, Ukrainian society have perceived that there is a third player that I want to bring on the table. The European Union, Western European countries, how have they perceived what have happened in the United States in the Oval Office, or perhaps they were part of the setup?
And I think this third player is also extremely important in this situation because of influence, especially French influence and Great Britain influence toward Ukraine and personally to Zelensky. Zelensky in London, in the big meeting of European leaders of Western and Northern Europe especially, leaders who are standing behind Ukraine, who are supporting Ukraine in the fight, and who are standing against the Trump's peace approach. Now they're saying about what to do further, how to help Ukraine. And maybe this quarrel, this scandal in Oval Office was also an attempt, a part of this geopolitical game, because Europe was out of the negotiation process. Zelensky few times demanded to include Europe in negotiation process. And now in the end of this European meeting, they said that they made a statement that Europe, together with Ukraine, is going to prepare the new peace plan which they will send to Trump. They're trying to interrupt, to include their position, their reasoning, their interest in this negotiation process. I think Europe now is really a third or first player, because we have Russia, we have Ukraine and Europe, and we have United States. Positions of Russia and United States are coming closer. Also China are coming closer, because all these sides are ready, especially Russia, maybe to ceasefire. But Russia is ready to discuss this question. And Ukraine in this and that Western and Northern Europe is standing against it. Maybe the reason of this scandal was absence of Europe in Oval Office and Zelensky hasn't feel enough confidence and support to sign any peaceful agreement to give a agreement for this ceasefire.
Can Europe and Ukraine handle the continuation of the war without the United States?
Marina?
I already expressed my opinion that it is impossible.
Okay, I think they can handle it for some time. because the Democratic administration made some storages of weapon, of money for Ukraine. There is a different calculation of these storages, but average calculation 6-9 months Ukraine has still enough resources to continue this fight even without the United States.
So their buffer time is 6 to 8 months.
Moreover, if Europe will be able to increase their support of Ukraine, maybe this time, maybe longer.
Marina, I want to go back to the United States. That scandal was perceived extremely negatively by one half of the society, and especially negatively by the Trump administration and people around Trump's administration. Is it possible to fix that broken relationship that went down the hill between Trump's administration and the Ukrainian political elite? And if it is possible, what steps do you think Ukrainian leaders should take? And maybe even personally Zelensky, because that was he played a part on it. If there's anything that he personally can and should do to rebuild that relationship, or that's just an end.
Thank you, James. I believe that I believe everything is possible, but to be realistic, I think it's too late already. And unfortunately, two personalities clashed in front of everyone. I mean, the whole world was observing that. I don't think it is possible to repair anything, because if we will remember that those relationship between President Trump and President Zelensky, they were not perfect before that clash in Oval, right? It was in 2019 when we sensed that something is really not productive is going on between Zelensky and between Trump. So that's a long-term, not successful relationship. Even if we would, let's say, think that apologies or something like that would be delivered to the United States, I believe it's too late. I believe that damage is done. However, it doesn't mean that teams from Ukraine and teams from the United States of America should not work in order to come closer and to work on a very pragmatic, understandable framework for the next steps, because countries should work together. It is impossible for Ukraine to survive. With all respect to the European Union and to the European Union leaders, I personally believe that Europe is using Mr. Zelensky, because Mr. Zelensky becomes as the spearhead for Russia and spearhead for United States. But I mean, European Union leaders, they are sophisticated, old money representatives. They know how to manipulate. They know how to do all those political tricks in order to save their places and to be re-elected again. And that is not a sad story. It is a realistic story. I'm sorry if I sound disappointing to our audience, but that's the reality. That's the reality.
No, I think it's just important to understand if this is something that can be fixed or where it's just going to continue going down the hill. Ruslan, if let's say we'll host or the elections will be hosted in Ukraine next month, are there political parties, political leaders that can potentially win those elections that have better relationship with Trump or Trump's administration, that can have a more prosperity and better understanding and more experience when it comes to dealing with Trump and achieving peace?
I will answer to you for your question with pleasure, but I want to add something more to the previous topic, because we have a very fast information flow, and United States Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that will not give you, Ukraine, money if you don't want peace. We will not give security guarantees to a country that is at war with Russia. This is a simply absurd, he said, for Fox News. Also, he said that we talked for 40 minutes before the cameras came on, and 45 minutes before things got out of hand. Zelensky basically kept saying the same thing. I will not make any concessions. They have to leave my land. I want 300 billion in reparations, United States dollars, and I want the United States to give me security guarantees while we are fighting Russia, he said. Letnik also said that Zelensky's demands were very ridiculous. They were very unreasonable. Zelensky was not trying to achieve peace. He was trying to make some imaginary deal with existed only in his head, and so on, so on. So this conflict, it looks like this conflict, informational competition, is going on, and I think this is a reaction of Trump's administration and Trump's team on this European meeting, on this oppositional European meeting, on this meeting of Western opposition,
Western liberal opposition.
Yeah, and if you are talking about Ukraine, if you are counting nowadays situation, generals Zaluzhny and Budanov are able to compete Zelensky in presidential elections. If we're talking about other candidates are far away from the ability to compete. And if we're talking about the parliament, because Ukrainian parliament were not so re-elected in the constitutional term, if you're talking about the parliament, near 8-10 parties able to enter the parliament, but there is no a single party which is able to make a mono majority like it nowadays Servant of People presidential party. The biggest party may be the Zaluzhny's party, near 30-35% of voters.
So let's break it down. We have high chances for General Zaluzhny. We have high chances for General Budanov. Does either of them potentially can have a good relationship with Trump, or between their teams, between Ukrainian potential future Ukrainian team and Trump administration team?
Marina?
Oh, it's complicated to say anything from my side at this stage. But what I would like, I do apologize that I changed the topic, but to outline for all our audience how profoundly clever Mr. Bortnik is, I just would like to read you the latest news from London, when Prime Minister of UK Starmer said out loud that he wants the new meeting with President Trump in order to discuss Ukrainian plan to mitigate and to reach this peace. Plus, he believes that the deal Mr. Trump wanted to make with Ukraine is a very good deal. That's why he is ready to invite even Russia under the negotiation table as far as the deal is concerned. So basically, my respect to you, Mr. Bortnik. Everything you've told us more than, let's say, more than 2 months ago, more or less without details, everything is now happening. Sorry about that, gentlemen.
All good. Let's just go back to to General Budanov and General Zaluzhny. Does either of them have a chance to build a better relationship with Trump and Trump's administration?
From my perspective, I'm not ready to answer that, and I never play, games in those spheres. I just do not know, not enough data not enough analytical opinions. So for me, it is not possible to say anything about those two gentlemen. However, I believe that we will not face any elections in Ukraine in the future, nearest future. And even if we would, Mr. Zelensky would do his best in order to save his position. That's
To
the
remain in power.
only. Yeah.
The final thing that it's also an important component, and it's really interesting to break that down too. We're forgetting about Russia. I think when that scandal has happened in the Oval Office, they probably threw out a party, or maybe not. What has happened?
God, James, why we would pay so much attention and exaggerate what Russia does? By the way, the behavior of Russian Federation during all that scandal was really cool. I mean, with the dignity, they did not. They were not arrogant. They did their job properly. I mean, diplomats of Russia did their job.
So fill us in, because I haven't watched how the Russians respond at all. I just made my personal assumption that they will just have they'll be in a good mood watching those kind of scandals between Ukraine and their allies.
I am not able to fill you in. What I can guarantee you that if something right would come from Russian news, I would pick it up. But there was neither dramatic, romantic, dirty, or dark comments from Russia during that period of time. And that says a lot to me. And, I'm against demonizing. I'm against black and white attitudes to any country. Whether it is bad that Russia attacked Ukraine, yes, of course it is. And we've been through that 1,000 times. But I think that we should be a bit more smarter in any analysis and to see a bit more different colors than black and white.
So
by the way, we have now the new tendency among the social philosophers saying that we entered the era of the new feudal empires. And if we're talking about the new era of feudal empires, we can easily understand who is going to be on the landscape of that nearest future or current situation. It's going to be the United States of America, China, Russia, India, all huge countries. So, but that was,
so
something out of our topic. I do apologize. I believe that we are talking too much and it takes more than 45 minutes already.
We have to cover it. I think it's important just to cover all these aspects.
I want
go ahead,
to add for about the Russians' position. Russia is trying to be very cautious now, and Russia is not showing any huge expectations on it.
Yep.
Of course, they maybe throw a party, but very calm party. Because they, as I see, they even don't believe that the situation may be changed very dramatically on Ukrainian front, on the Western unity, and so on. So they are very careful now. They are very calm. They are trying to decrease expectations even inside of their society and their army.
Yes.
And they are just waiting like that fisherman on the river bank of Yanzi, which is waiting when the corpse of the enemies will be thinking down.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. I just adore that. Thank you, Ruslan. That was absolutely,
it looks like so
perfect
for me.
Yep.
From the political perspective, does Russia can perceive that as a win?
From political perspective, I think Russia believes that she is winning now because the unity of West is broken.
It's broken, yeah.
Ukraine lost a very significant part of support from United States. Enemies exhausted. Russia is also exhausted, but enemies exhausted more. If we're talking about Ukraine, Ukraine is exhausted more than Russia. It looks from inside Ukraine. So many governments in the West which took part in the beginning of the war, Johnson government, Scholz government, so on, dismissed during these 3 years. So from Russian perspectives, I think they are thinking they're winning very slowly, but they are winning the war.
Colleagues, if there is anything else that you would like to add or to finalize it.
I just would like to add that I do really appreciate Ruslan's views on the geopolitics, and I'm really thankful to you, James, because you are, in my life, from my perspective, the best person who can moderate, ask the greatest question. And you are very, very empathetic young gentleman, and that's a very rare occasion nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And
colleagues, thank you so much for all the insights and the comments and helping people who watch us to break it down into factual, analytical pieces. Thank you again.
And
thank
you very much. Behind all of us, for our viewers, don't forget to make a like and to write down your comments. We'll be very lucky to answer for your best comments. Thank you, friends.